From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Kansas Week.
Despite repeated lobbying from both sides of the aisle, the governor doubles down on her opposition to the latest tax bill to come out of the State House. What does this mean for you? Plus, first it was a Kansas court system, now the city of Wichita. And don't forget a major hospital. Cyber attacks seem to be multiplying across the state. How can you stay safe? That's what we're talking about right now on Kansas Week. I'm Pilar Pedraza, and this is Kansas Week. A cybersecurity expert says one of the most prolific ransomware groups in the world appears to be behind this week's cyber attack on the city of Wichita. The U.S. is now offering a $10 million reward for the man it says runs that operation. KAKE's Eli Higgins has the details.
Last year, more than $1 billion is known to be paid in ransoms, just to give you some sense of the scale.
Cybersecurity expert Brett Callow spends most of his time studying cyber attacks across the country. And Tuesday, he says he noticed Wichita on a list no city wants to be on.
Lockbit, like most other ransomware groups, has a site on the dark web where they list victims, or at least the victims who don't pay, and they publish whatever data they've stolen. Wichita has been now added to Lockbit's site.
This week, the city of Wichita announced a big cyber attack that shut down many of its services. Now, Callow says Lockbit is demanding an undisclosed amount of money from the city by May 15th.
They are trying to force the city into paying. If the city pays, they will receive a pinky promise that the stolen data will be destroyed. If they don't pay, the data gets posted online.
Tuesday, after years of chasing him, the U.S. Department of Justice revealed who it believes created Lockbit, the cyber criminal group Callow says appears to be behind the Wichita attack.
Today we are announcing that Dmitry Horoshev, a Russian national, is charged in a 26-count indictment with committing and conspiring to commit Lockbit attacks. Horoshev was the creator, developer, and administrator of the Lockbit ransomware group.
The DOJ says it's offering a $10 million reward for information that leads to Horoshev's arrest. But even if he gets caught, Callow says at this rate, ransomware isn't going anywhere. And in his opinion, places like Wichita that are victimized by the cybercrime should stop paying these criminals.
There is too much money involved for this problem to go away quickly and easily. Personally, I think government needs to look at banning ransom payments. I think that is the only solution.
And that's just one of the two major cyber attacks affecting Wichitans this week, but they're very different in nature, so we're going to look at them separately today. Here to do that, we have State Representative Ken Rajas, a Republican from Agra, Derby Republican, and Speaker Pro Tem, Representative Blake Carpenter. We'll see if I can talk in today's episode. And we also have Democrat from Wichita, State Representative John Carmichael. And apparently I'm blanking on names too. Wow, this is going to be an interesting show. I think my brain has been cyber attacked.
We've got Carpenter and Carmichael, and we get confused all the time. I just wish I could get his paycheck. You know?
All right, there we go. Well, looking at this, we have one suggestion from our cybersecurity expert that would require you guys to get involved, which would be to ban paying ransoms for these things. What do you think?
So I'll go ahead and take a stab at this. Because we did actually pass a major bill. The governor just signed it yesterday to enhance our cybersecurity and IT infrastructure across the entire state of Kansas over the next 5 years. It's a plan that last fall is when we really got a wake-up call from the judicial branch being shut down for 2 months. That impacted a lot of people, and we're still seeing the ramifications of that today. Now we're seeing the city of Wichita and others who are continuing getting these ransomware attacks, and to his point, it's not going away because people are paying these ransomwares. But the thing is if they completely shut them out of their systems and you have no backup, then are you willing to lose all your data? And so it puts people in a really rough spot. Do I pay it and hope that they unlock my system, or do I pay it and hope that they don't share the information that they got from the system? So it's a difficult decision on how they're gonna act, and there's no this is the answer and this is how we should solve this problem. And unfortunately, we have a lot of foreign actors. We saw that a Russian was involved in this one. Well, China, North Korea, Iran, all these other countries are making a lot of money by doing this, and that's how they're funding their acts of terrorism or other aggression.
Which kind of raises the question, foreign actors involved in this, does that not make it a federal issue? Should the federal government be involved?
You know, and I think that's an easy answer, but it's more complicated than that. If we want to wait for the federal government to get things done, a lot of things we did in the legislature this year wouldn't have had to happen. Yes, it is, but with inaction in D.C., the mess that it is, states that have to step up. I think, though, as far as the state to say, we as a legislature, and if the governor would sign a banning of that's going to be up to the cities. But I think what this is, Pilar, is a wake-up call to our counties of all sizes, not just maybe our 2 or our 7 biggest ones. Every county needs to be aware of this, have a backup, have a plan, have things off-site, be prepared. I think the days of good roads and other protection, cybersecurity is now right on our doorstep, something we all have to be aware of.
Yeah, because it does. I mean, even if the county or the city is able to get that back, the courts, personal information is discovered in that way. We now know 150,000 people lost their personal information in the court cyber hacking. I mean, it's a mess.
Well, and I got a letter from AT&T just last week, my internet provider, saying that my personal information has been shared somewhere with somebody, somehow. One of the lending institutions where I deposit money has now paid for credit tracking or whatever now because of insecurity of records. I'm on the state 911 council. You know, we've had to pull some people to the trough, basically, and force them to drink in order to get some of the dispatch centers, some of the law enforcement agencies, even the system itself, to try to harden it from cyber attack. It's a progressing, moving target, if you will. The people who know how to hack try to stay one step ahead of the security specialists who know how to stop it. I do disagree a little bit with my friend Ken that I do think that this is a place where federal intervention and federal action is desperately required. Because if we just fix a problem in Kansas, it won't really fix it, because it will still go on in Oklahoma and Missouri and everywhere else. As Blake points out, we're dealing with foreign actors here, nation states. They try to hack our elections, they try to hack our hospital. Several Russian nationals are still under federal indictment for hacking Westar's accounting systems at the Wolf Creek Nuclear Generating Station. So yes, we could appropriate a lot more money, but I really think that this is a federal responsibility. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do what we can, but I think if we want to fix it, it's going to take something a lot larger than the resources of the state of Kansas.
And to your point, when we look at the other big cyber attack that we had here in Wichita, it wasn't actually in Wichita, it was on a national company, but it directly affected Wichitans. It came just days after the attack on the city of Wichita, a breach of the Ascension Healthcare System, which owns and operates the Via Christi hospitals here in Wichita. Within hours, we saw the impact it would have on patient care, as KAKE's Leon Purvis shows us.
This doesn't surprise me.
Registered nurse Lisa Watson works at Ascension Via Christi. She heard about a cyber attack on Wednesday. The hospital says first it saw unusual activity, then determined someone attacked its computer systems. Watson is frustrated.
So our systems are all down at St. Francis. We have canceled most of the OR, and they have also been impacted for tomorrow. Our burn program is out of commission, so we are the only burn center in the state of Kansas.
In a statement, Ascension says in part, our care teams are trained for these kinds of disruptions and have initiated procedures to ensure patient care delivery continues to be safe and as minimally impacted as possible. There has been a disruption to clinical operations, and we continue to assess the impact and duration of the disruption. The attack means nurses and doctors have to work old school.
We are paper charting. We have definitely gone back in time. Code Blue and rapid responses for the hospital, the system is not working, so they were having to call them overhead.
Watson adds, the food service industry is down at the hospital, so nurses can't get patients' food in a timely manner. Ascension says if any sensitive patient data was compromised in the attack, it will notify those affected.
My concern is that the information in these computers is protected health information for the residents of Sedgwick County. So I am very concerned about what will happen next time.
Ascension Via Christi says it has a third-party expert assisting in the investigation.
Now, this also left the county scrambling as it tried to rearrange its EMS ambulance service around the sudden diversion from St. Francis Level 1 ER, because that left us with only the one Level 1 ER over at Wesley. Wesley actually brought Sedgwick County on site. Now, that diversion and the closure of the burn unit, those sorts of things, that only lasted for about 24 hours, but still, that was a major disruption to patient care, and goes to your point that if stuff's happening outside of Kansas, it's still affecting Kansas.
Well, you know, when it comes to matters such as patient diversions from ERs, we've also had that occur because of other conditions. The Andover tornado, as an example, nobody notified the dispatch center that St. Francis was ready to accept ER patients, so they were all going to Wesley and St. Joe. You know, when we're talking about these critical services, whether it's EMS, whether it's dispatch, all the other things that come in, we have to devote additional resources and effort to try to protect those assets, probably more so than my home internet, so that I can watch this show on DVR later this evening.
Now, we've talked about some legislative efforts to shore up security for the state, but this is a private company, and that would be a whole nother mess of laws and potentialities involved. What can be done? Can anything be done?
I think that, you know, once you start crossing that line of government taking care of what we're supposed to do as far as government goes, that is a private entity, and I think we have to be very careful about stepping across that line and as government mandating they do something when it is their responsibility to do that themselves. If they prove that they can't secure people's data, or they prove that they can't provide a service that people need, then at that point people should then move with their feet and their pocketbooks and go somewhere else, because it is up to that company in order to protect the data of the people that they serve. But this is just a small taste of what, if we end up in a conflict at some point with a near peer or peer adversary, the problem that you're going to see is it's not just going to be government to government cyber attacks. It's going to be carried out on the citizens of the population. It's going to be carried out on our nuclear dams, our water treatment facilities. It's going to be carried out on hospitals like you're seeing here.
Traffic control system.
Exactly. Everything is up for grabs at that point when we get to a conflict.
Control circuits that are important to the military to accomplish its missions, so sure.
Exactly. So that is the problem that we're seeing today, and so we all have to start doing a better job of increasing what we are doing in order to better protect ourselves, because if a conflict with China does end up occurring, here within, you know, they're saying 2027, if that does end up happening, then we're going to start seeing a lot bigger incidents here in the homeland with these types of cyber attacks that will harm our citizens.
And we can't also forget that there are a lot of people who don't have full faith in our elections because they believe that foreign operatives have somehow attacked the software or the data transmission systems, etc. So it is a big problem, and it's going to take resources, it's going to take money, it's going to take expertise, but unfortunately I'm not sure we will ever obtain complete security. You know, the Lindbergh baby was kidnapped and ransom was demanded, and we hear someone from a foreign country, I think, telling us that we maybe shouldn't be paying ransom. Well, I agree we shouldn't be paying ransom, but are we willing to tell private citizens what they can and cannot do to secure or re-secure their information and data? It's hard.
Until something happens, and then they'll demand, why didn't you protect us?
Well,
and
I'm just, the proposition that we make it against the law to pay ransom is not a new concept. Right. You can go back in kidnapping cases forever and a day.
I seem to remember a president saying, "I will not negotiate with terrorists."
Indeed, and you know, you can think about more than one who said similar things.
Right.
I think we're in agreement here. I wish we had a magic wand, and I can guarantee you this: there's not a law that the Kansas legislature can pass and the governor that can sign that will give us complete safety and security.
You're absolutely right. And as we've studied this issue in legislative modernization, no matter how much we improve and our IT systems over the next 5-6 years, the weakest link will always be the human element. And so that is, unless we get training and everything else, we can try to mitigate, but the human element is always going to be the weakness in any IT system.
Case in point, when that cybersecurity expert first reached out to us, he sent us a quick one-line email with 2 links, one to his tweets, one to a news article. I didn't trust it. I actually called the company and said, do you have a Brett Callow who works for you? Is he a cybersecurity expert? Have him email this email address if so. And he did within a couple minutes and said, thank you for checking. It's little things like that. I don't trust emails that come into my inbox anymore. I mean, you can't.
No, and I mean, we get emails all the time in the legislature of people telling us to click this link or open this attachment. I've had to tell people, sorry, you're just going to have to copy and paste what you have in that other source document into this email so I can read it here because I'm not going to click on it.
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, we've got other things to talk about because this issue not going away. It's been 2 weeks now since lawmakers adjourned for the year, but they went home with the threat of a veto and a special session hanging over their heads. The governor this week reiterating her promises. From social media to statements to the press, state lawmakers, especially leadership, have been pushing Governor Laura Kelly to sign the tax cut bill they sent her. The legislature has been over backward to address her stated concerns. The state's fiscal outlook is positive, and we have a hefty budget surplus. The governor is out of excuses, said Representative Dan Hawkins, the Speaker of the Kansas House. But Thursday, she told Steve Kraske on KCUR's Up to Date podcast that surplus won't last, and she's not willing to go back to the fiscal imbalances of previous eras.
That incredible surplus that we have, ending balance, all of that will be gone if I were to sign this bill. So there's absolutely no way that I will sign it.
Kelly said debate about major tax reform would resume at the State House after she called a special session of the legislature to consider an alternative plan, something she promised to present for consideration by both House and Senate members.
We do have enough money to do a very robust tax cut, just not as much as the legislature proposed.
All right, so obviously she's not moving an inch. The legislature over the last 12 weeks or so has shown that while we're willing to work with each other, we're kind of holding the line here too, to a certain extent. Where does this end? Do we get a tax cut out of this at all?
Blake's in legislative leadership. I'm anxious to hear what he says on
You're
behalf
a Democrat.
of the House.
I'm anxious to hear what you have to say on behalf of your party.
And we all voted together on these tax bills in the House. So the governor's thrown down the gauntlet. She's going to have to deliver a tax plan that's acceptable.
Well, what's interesting to me, though, is that she's saying that the tax plan that we passed to her, the third iteration of it, we've compromised every iteration and moved her direction every time because we don't have the votes to override. So we want tax cuts. We don't have the votes to do it. So we've had to come her direction. Now, the problem is that when we passed this third tax bill, it was only $3 million more than her proposed tax bill, but she's saying ours is too expensive.
How about if I said it's $4.3 million? Would that matter?
Well, okay, we'll go $4.3 million.
We're well within the margin of error.
We are.
It's an infinitesimally insignificant, small difference.
When you're talking about billions of dollars in the state budget,
absolutely,
we basically hit the mark with how much she said that she would accept for a tax plan, and now she's rejecting it. So, John, I don't expect him to say this, but I'm going to say it. The governor's playing election year politics and trying to influence the outcome of the elections this fall.
I want to, well, you had a thought, but I also want to know more about how you think that's going to work.
Well, and I would tend to agree, and it's been out in a few places. But I was very frustrated at the end of the session because of this, because it seems like it's kind of Lucy and Charlie Brown, and where, okay, we have an agreement, now the ball gets moved again. This is bipartisan. Republicans and Democrats came together. Other than which, a couple votes short in the Senate to do the override. So here we are. I said this a long time ago. I said I'm more of a realist than an optimist. Some of the legislators say, oh, she'll sign it or she'll let it become law. No, she won't, because precisely that. It's an election year. What will happen is you can say, look, the Republicans can't get, the supermajority can't get anything done. That's why you elect my people in there. And then she made some comment about how we can't go out campaigning because of this, because you're going to bring us back in. You know, just let's do the deal. Let's do the deal. I mean, I know it's political. She doesn't like the single rate. She wants whatever, and she wants this, she wants that. There's things I don't like about the bill either. I would love to go toe-to-toe and say, you know what, this will not work. Because one of the things, Pilar, that we talked about before the session started is, my constituents, they didn't come begging, oh, please give us an income tax cut in Kansas. That's a federal deal. Give us property tax relief. We failed. We failed as a legislature. We failed in this package. We need to deliver more. That's what I'm so upset about. And that's why I'm passionate about it, because that's what my constituents want, is they want property tax relief, even though we can't do a lot. But what we can do, we should do, because that's what the people really have been clamoring for. These other things are all well and good. Property tax relief still, and we have to work with our counties to lower that.
And John, you talked about, you voted with the gentleman across the table on this. Definitely a split in the party over this.
There is certainly a difference of opinion amongst Democrats. I believe that the governor should not have vetoed either of the most recent tax packages. She did. That's her decision. I'm not here honestly to try to defend her decision, but she's bitten off a lot. She's going to have to deliver now her tax plan, something that is acceptable to the legislature as a whole. And I think I don't know where she's going to get there, because as Blake points out, her target for tax cuts and what we accomplished is well within the margin of error. The other thing we need to think about is we have a surplus in Kansas, a large one. There's two ways to get rid of a governmental surplus. One, you can spend it. And unfortunately, I think some of our appropriations committees got way too generous with earmarks and pork projects for particular counties, particular legislative districts. But the better way to deal with it is not to spend it, it's to give it back to taxpayers. But when you do that, that is not quote unquote sustainable, because you have to be giving back more to spend down the surplus. At some point, you're not going to be able to do that forever, because the objective is to get rid of the surplus. And so I think that we should have in law what we already passed in the House 2 or 3 different times. There's a strategic mistake, though, that I think my friends in Republican leadership made. If they would have followed the normal practice of conducting sine die after the governor had the opportunity or the obligation to sign or veto legislation, we would go back for sine die after she had vetoed this tax package. And I know in the House we would have the votes to override. The question is always in our business, what is the Senate going to do? And I'll be honest with you, I think the governor has maintained closer contact and relations with senators, in fact, some dissident Republican senators. And I think that's part of the reason we're in the mess that we're in right now.
Well, and when those individuals in the Senate, the majority, out of the 3 of them, 2 of them aren't running for re-election, right. So they're not accountable to the voters, and so that is one of the biggest issues we have. We can be
fearful about that across the board, because there's a number of our members who aren't coming back either, but they're going to be back for a special session, and they're lame ducks.
We can only hope.
We can only hope, what, that they're coming back?
Yeah, they're going to come back.
Well, unfortunately, that is a good point, because sometimes attendance at special sessions and sine die tends to fall off, but the constitutional majority numbers and the constitutional override numbers remain the same.
But Kansans are still buying things. Revenues are up again.
Oh,
so
absolutely. I mean, the economy is booming. I agree with you, Ken. The governor, the president, we have a good economy.
Every year when the legislature meets, we spend hours upon hours in tax committee and hours upon hours. So this demagoguery of bringing back the governor from 2 or 3 times ago, that's played itself out. I hope. I hope it has.
Here's what I hope's played itself out, and that is certain well-connected senators walking into appropriation conference committees with pork projects for their town, new jet airplanes, all right, $15 million for border security, but there's a bunch of other things that we're putting into this budget. There's nothing more or less than pork, particularly by influential senators, and that needs to stop.
So one of the things that I give him all the credit, you know, Henry Helgerson from Wichita, representative out of here in Wichita, he goes down and, I mean, he'll melt those mics about our spending.
I've heard him.
Yes, and it's a good reality check. But quite frankly, though, moving forward, we do not. Yeah, we're going to cut taxes, but we also need to get our spending in check with all these projects, everything else through the Appropriations Committee. No, we need to manage our spending wisely moving forward in the future. And I think, honestly, we need to start looking at what does it look like when we actually have somebody in the legislative branch digging into the staff members, digging into these executive agencies when we're not in session, so that when we come back, they can give us better reports, more details, so that we can then make better choices.
Well, it's certainly a very complex situation, and we've also talked a lot about how if you guys go back for special session, it doesn't matter what you're called back for, it's all fair game, and who knows what'll happen.
You know, historically, when we have, at least during my tenure and the year before I came here, when we come back for special session, we have stuck pretty well to the issue at hand. But it could always go completely off the rails. So
I did talk to former minority leader. He's still a current representative from here in Wichita, but we asked him the question a few weeks ago, you know, how you've been around for many special sessions, because he's been around since the 80s or 90s. And he said, you know, out of all the special sessions that I've seen, most of them are not successful. And so I'm hoping we have to be successful. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We have to be successful with this one. But that goes to say, historically, when a governor calls the legislature back, it's not everything that the governor hoped it would be.
I don't know if you're talking about Tom Sawyer or who.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd have to disagree if that's what he said or communicated, because we were back for school finance. We solved the problem.
He's going further back.
We were back for the hard 50 death penalty related matters. That was successful.
COVID was successful.
You're
right. In the modern era,
every special session that I've been at, we accomplished the example
in the modern era.
In the modern era,
I think
because we are out of time.
Back to others.
Thank you three so much for joining us, and thank you as well. We'd also like to thank our news partners at KSN News, the Wichita Eagle, and Cake News for sharing their materials with us. For now, stay safe and have a great week.